The small town of Willow Creek, nestled in the rolling hills of Vermont, was buzzing with excitement on June 12, 2016. Emily Whitaker, a 28-year-old schoolteacher with a radiant smile, was set to marry her high school sweetheart, Daniel Harper, in a picturesque ceremony at St. Anne's Church. The whole town seemed to be involved. Neighbors baked pies, the florist donated roses, and children practiced tossing petals for the aisle. Emily's white lace veil, a family heirloom from her grandmother, had been the talk of the bridal shower, its delicate embroidery catching the sunlight as she tried it on. But the joy of that summer day would soon turn to dread. Emily was last seen the night before the wedding at her bachelorette party in the Willow Creek Community Center. Friends described her as glowing, laughing as she danced with her bridesmaids to old pop songs. Around 10 p.m., she stepped outside for some air, saying she needed a moment to herself. Her best friend, Claire, assumed she'd be right back. But Emily never returned. Her phone, left on a table inside, buzzed unanswered. Her purse, containing her wallet and keys, sat untouched. By midnight, panic set in. Daniel, alerted by Claire, joined the search, combing the streets with friends and family. The police were called, and by dawn, a full-scale search was underway. The investigation began with hope but quickly hit dead ends. Emily's car was still parked at the community center, undisturbed. There were no signs of a struggle, no witnesses who saw her leave. Her white sneakers, worn for comfort at the party, were found neatly placed by the back door as if she'd slipped them off before vanishing into the night. The police interviewed everyone at the party, 30 guests, the bartender, even the DJ, but no one saw anything unusual. Theories swirled. Had she gotten cold feet and run away? Was she abducted? The lack of evidence frustrated investigators, and the case grew cold within months. Daniel was devastated. He refused to believe Emily would leave without a word, not after their years together, their shared dreams of a family. He spent weeks searching the woods around Willow Creek, calling her name until his voice gave out. Claire, racked with guilt for not checking on Emily sooner, organized vigils and fundraisers to keep the case alive. Emily's parents, Margaret and Tom Whitaker, clung to hope, keeping her room untouched, her wedding dress still hanging in the closet. But as months turned to years, the town's optimism faded. St. Anne's Church, where the wedding was to take place, became a quiet reminder of the tragedy, its steeple looming over Willow Creek like a silent sentinel. 9 years later, on a chilly October morning in 2025, a group of teenagers exploring the abandoned St. Anne's Church made a startling discovery. The church had been shuttered since 2018, its congregation dwindling and its roof leaking. The kids, daring each other to venture inside, pushed through the warped wooden doors and into the dusty sanctuary. Amid broken pews and scattered hymnals, one of them, 16-year-old Mia Carter, noticed something white caught in a pile of debris near the altar. She tugged it free, revealing a tattered lace veil, its edges frayed but its embroidery unmistakable. Mia's mother, a former friend of Emily's, recognized it immediately from photos of the bridal shower. The police were called and the veil was confirmed to be Emily's, reigniting a case that had long been forgotten. The discovery sent shockwaves through Willow Creek. How had the veil ended up in the church, locked away for years? Why was it near the altar, a place Emily was never seen after her disappearance? The police reopened the case, and Detective Laura Bennett, a seasoned investigator new to the area, took the lead. She met with Emily's family, who were both hopeful and haunted by the find. Margaret clutched the veil, tears streaming down her face, while Daniel, now 37 and still unmarried, stared at it in silence. Claire, who had moved away but returned for the news, felt a chill. She was supposed to wear the veil the next day, she whispered. How did it get here? Detective Bennett began by re-examining the original case files. The veil's discovery raised new questions. Had Emily been in the church that night? Was the veil placed there later, and if so, by whom? The church, though active in 2016, had been locked after services and no one reported seeing Emily there. Bennett interviewed the teens who found the veil, but they knew little beyond their thrill-seeking adventure. She then turned to the church's history, requesting records from the diocese and interviewing former congregants. One name kept surfacing: Father Michael Reed, the priest who had officiated at St. Anne's until its closure. Reed, now in his late 60s and living in a retirement home, had been beloved in Willow Creek but left abruptly in 2018, citing health issues. Bennett's first meeting with Father Reed was cordial but tense. His memory seemed foggy, and he claimed no knowledge of Emily's veil or her disappearance. "I prayed for her every day," he said, his hands trembling slightly. But something in his demeanor, averted eyes, a nervous cough, set Bennett on edge. She dug deeper, learning that Reed had been the last to lock the church the night of Emily's disappearance after a late choir practice. Could he have seen something? Or worse, been involved? The thought seemed unthinkable in a town where Reed was revered, but Bennett knew better than to trust appearances. Meanwhile, Claire began her own investigation, driven by guilt and a need for answers. She reached out to old friends from the bachelorette party, hoping to uncover details the police might have missed. One friend, Sarah, mentioned something odd. Emily had seemed distracted that night, checking her phone repeatedly before stepping outside. Sarah assumed it was wedding nerves, but now it felt significant. Claire also visited the community center, still in use but eerily unchanged. Standing by the back door where Emily's sneakers were found, she noticed a faint path leading toward the church, barely visible through overgrown grass. It was a long shot, but she wondered if Emily had walked that way, perhaps drawn to the church for reasons unknown. Back at the police station, Bennett received a breakthrough. Forensic analysis of the veil revealed traces of dust and paint chips matching the church's interior, suggesting it had been there for years. But there was something else, a single strand of hair, not Emily's, caught in the lace. DNA testing was underway, but results would take weeks. Bennett's instincts told her the hair could belong to someone who handled the veil after Emily's disappearance, perhaps even her abductor. She decided to press Father Reed again, this time with more direct questions. As she prepared, a call came from Mia Carter, the teen who found the veil. "I went back to the church," Mia said, her voice shaky. "There's something else you need to see." Mia Carter led Detective Bennett through the creaking doors of St. Anne's Church, her flashlight cutting through the dim interior. The air was thick with dust, and the stained glass windows, cracked and faded, cast eerie patterns on the floor. Mia pointed to a trapdoor behind the altar, partially hidden by a rotting rug. "I didn't notice it before," she said, "but I came back to look around, and it was open, like someone had been here." Bennett's pulse quickened. The trapdoor, rusted and heavy, led to a small basement, a space not mentioned in the church's records. She called for backup, and within an hour, a forensics team was on site. The basement was cramped, with damp stone walls and a dirt floor. Old hymnals and candle stubs littered the corners, but what caught Bennett's eye was a wooden crate tucked against the far wall. Inside, she found a collection of items: a woman's scarf, a silver locket, and a pair of earrings. None were Emily's, but their presence was chilling. The locket contained a photo of a young woman Bennett didn't recognize, and the earrings had a faint bloodstain. The team bagged the items for analysis, and Bennett's mind raced. Was this a storage space for trophies, the kind a predator might keep? And why was Emily's veil found so close to this hidden room? Back at the station, Bennett ran the locket's photo through missing persons databases. It matched a case from 2014. Rachel Evans, a 25-year-old from a neighboring town who vanished after a church event in Willow Creek. Rachel's family had long suspected foul play, but her case, like Emily's, went cold. The earrings were trickier. DNA from the blood was degraded, but preliminary tests suggested it wasn't Emily's or Rachel's. Bennett began to suspect a pattern, one that pointed to someone with access to St. Anne's Church. Father Reed's abrupt departure in 2018 now seemed less like a health issue and more like an escape. Claire, meanwhile, was following her own lead. She tracked down the DJ from Emily's bachelorette party, now living in Burlington. Over coffee, He recalled something he hadn't told police in 2016, fearing it was irrelevant. There was this guy hanging around the community center that night, he said. Not a guest, just watching. Older, maybe 50s, wearing a dark jacket. I saw him near the back door when Emily stepped out. Claire pressed for details, but the DJ's memory was fuzzy. Still, it was enough to make her wonder if Emily had been followed. She shared the information with Bennett, who added it to her growing file. Bennett's second visit to Father Reed was less polite. At the retirement home, she confronted him with photos of the basement crate and Rachel's locket. Reed's face paled, and his hands shook as he clutched his rosary. I don't know anything about that, he insisted. The church was old. People stored things there all the time. But when Bennett mentioned the veil's proximity to the trapdoor, Reed's composure cracked. I wasn't there that night, he blurted, then caught himself, eyes wide. Bennett leaned forward. Which night, Father? You said you didn't know about Emily. Reed clammed up, demanding a lawyer. Bennett left, certain he was hiding something but lacking the evidence to hold him. The forensic results on the veil's hair came back a week later. The DNA matched a man named Thomas Keller, a former janitor at St. Anne's who had worked there until 2017. Keller, now 62, lived on the outskirts of Willow Creek in a rundown trailer. His record showed minor offenses, petty theft, public intoxication, but nothing violent. Bennett and her partner, Officer Ryan Patel, visited Keller unannounced. He was wiry, with gray stubble and nervous eyes, and he reeked of cheap whiskey. When shown a photo of Emily's veil, he claimed he'd never seen it, but his twitching hands told a different story. I cleaned the church, he said. Found all sorts of junk. Maybe I moved it without knowing. Bennett wasn't convinced but let him go, placing him under surveillance. Claire's investigation took her back to the church, where she met Mia, who was still shaken by her discovery. Together, they explored the grounds, hoping for overlooked clues. Near the church's back entrance, Claire noticed a rusted metal grate half buried in the grass. It led to a drainage tunnel just wide enough for a person to crawl through. The tunnel connected to the church basement, offering a hidden way in and out. Claire's heart sank as she realized Emily could have been taken through it, unseen by anyone at the community center. She called Bennett, who sent a team to investigate. The tunnel was empty, but scuff marks and a torn piece of fabric suggested recent use. The case gained traction in Willow Creek, with locals whispering about the church's dark secrets. Emily's parents, Margaret and Tom, appeared on local news, pleading for information. Daniel, struggling with renewed grief, began visiting the church daily, sitting in the pews where Emily was meant to walk down the aisle. One evening, he found a small key taped under a pew, its metal worn but intact. He turned it over to Bennett, who recognized it as a match for the basement crate's lock. The discovery tied the church even closer to Emily's disappearance, but it also raised questions. Who hid the key, and why? Bennett's team dug into Thomas Keller's past. He'd been a drifter before settling in Willow Creek in 2010, taking the janitor job through a church program for ex-convicts. Former congregants described him as quiet but odd, often lingering after services. One woman recalled Keller staring at Emily during a Christmas pageant in 2015, his gaze unsettling. Bennett also learned Keller had access to the church's keys, including the basement, and often worked late nights. She requested a search warrant for his trailer, hoping to find more evidence. As the investigation intensified, Claire received an anonymous note slipped under her apartment door. Written in shaky handwriting, it read, "Stop looking or you'll end up like her." Claire's blood ran cold, but she refused to back down. She showed the note to Bennett, who increased patrols around Claire's home. The note's paper was traced to a local hardware store, but surveillance footage was inconclusive. Bennett suspected Keller or someone connected to the church, possibly Father Reed, who had been unusually silent since their last meeting. The search of Keller's trailer yielded a breakthrough. Hidden under a floorboard, police found a small box containing women's jewelry, including a bracelet engraved with Ari, likely Rachel Evans. There was also a faded photo of Emily taken at a church picnic, her smile bright and unaware. Keller was arrested, but he denied everything, claiming the items were gifts from unnamed friends. His DNA on the veil, though, was damning. Bennett interrogated him for hours, but Keller stuck to his story, insisting he only cleaned the church and never harmed anyone. Asked the priest, he muttered once, then fell silent. Bennett turned her focus back to Father Reed, now her primary suspect. She subpoenaed his financial records, uncovering irregular deposits in 2016 and 2017, small but frequent, from an untraceable account. Were they payments for silence? Or something worse? As she prepared to confront Reed again, Mia called with another find, a hidden compartment in the church's organ loft containing a bundle of letters. The letters, unsigned but dated 2016, spoke of keeping the secret safe and protecting the flock. Bennett's gut told her the answers to Emily's fate lay within those pages, but deciphering them would take time Emily's family had already waited 9 years for. Detective Laura Bennett sat at her desk, the bundle of letters from St. Anne's Church spread before her. The paper was yellowed, the ink smudged in places, but the words were clear enough to send a chill through her. Written in a careful, slanted script, they spoke of sins buried beneath the altar and a sacrifice for the greater good. None mentioned Emily Whitaker by name, but one letter, dated June 11, 2016, the day before her disappearance, ended with a cryptic line, "The bride must be silenced before the dawn." Bennett's heart raced. Was this a reference to Emily? And who had written these words? Forensic analysis of the letters revealed no fingerprints, but the paper matched a brand used by the church's office in the mid-2010s. Bennett suspected Father Michael Reed, given his role at St. Anne's and his evasive behavior. She requested a handwriting sample from his retirement home records, but the process was slow and Reed's lawyer was stalling. Meanwhile, Thomas Keller, the arrested janitor, remained tight-lipped, refusing to elaborate on his cryptic remark about asking the priest. Bennett sensed a connection between the two men, but without concrete evidence, she couldn't crack their silence. Claire, determined to help, spent hours poring over old photos from Emily's bachelorette party shared by friends on social media. One blurry image caught her eye, a man in a dark jacket standing near the community center's back door, partially obscured by shadows. His posture matched the DJ's description from years ago. Claire enhanced the photo using a free online tool, revealing a glimpse of a face, older, with sharp features. She didn't recognize him but sent the image to Bennett, who ran it through facial recognition. The system flagged a match: Patrick Downey, a former church volunteer who had left Willow Creek in 2017. Downey, now 58, had no criminal record but was known for his close ties to Father Reed. Bennett tracked Downey to a small apartment in Albany, New York. She and Officer Patel drove out to question him, finding a nervous man with thinning hair and darting eyes. Downey admitted volunteering at St. Anne's but claimed he barely knew Emily. When shown the photo from the party, he paled. "I was just dropping off hymnals that night," he stammered. "Didn't see anything." But his trembling hands betrayed him. Bennett pressed harder, mentioning the letters and the veil. Downey clammed up, asking them to leave. On the way back, Bennett requested a warrant to search his apartment, convinced he was hiding something. In Willow Creek, the discovery of the letters reignited public interest in Emily's case. Local reporters camped outside the police station, and a true crime podcast began covering the story, drawing amateur sleuths to town. Emily's fiancé, Daniel Harper, struggled with the attention. The letter's mention of a bride haunted him, making him question everything he knew about that night. He confided in Claire, admitting he'd seen Emily arguing with someone on her phone days before the wedding. "She wouldn't tell me who it was," he said, voice breaking. "I thought it was just stress." Claire urged him to tell Bennett, and he did, adding another layer to the mystery. Bennett followed up on Daniel's tip, subpoenaing Emily's phone records from 2016. The data preserved by the original investigation showed multiple calls to an unregistered number in the days leading up to her disappearance. The number was traced to a burner phone purchased in cash at a gas station near Willow Creek. Bennett's team reviewed the station's old security footage, a long shot given the 9-year gap. Miraculously, a grainy clip showed a man buying the phone on June 9, 2016. His face was unclear, but his build and jacket matched Patrick Downey's. Bennett's suspicions deepened. Downey wasn't just a bystander, he was involved. The search warrant for Downey's apartment came through, and Albany police raided it while Bennett watched via video feed. They found a locked safe containing a stash of photos, some of Emily at church events, others of Rachel Evans, and a third woman, unidentified. There was also a keyring with a small cross identical to one used at St. Anne's for basement access. Downey was arrested for possession of suspicious materials, but he refused to talk without a deal. Bennett knew she needed more to tie him to Emily's disappearance, and she hoped the letters would provide the missing link. Back in Willow Creek, Claire and Mia continued their unofficial investigation, driven by a mix of guilt and determination. They interviewed former church members, focusing on those who knew Father Reed and his inner circle. One woman, Ellen Price, a choir director in 2016, hesitated before sharing a memory. "Father Reed was different that summer," she said. "He started holding private meetings in the church office, always with the same men, Keller, Downey, and a few others. They'd locked the door, and I heard arguing once, something about keeping her quiet." Ellen hadn't connected it to Emily at the time, but now it felt ominous. Claire passed the information to Bennett, who added Ellen to her witness list. The handwriting analysis on the letters finally came back, and it was a partial match to Father Reed. The sample wasn't conclusive, but it was enough for Bennett to request a formal interview. This time, Reed's lawyer couldn't delay. At the station, Reed sat stone-faced, his frail appearance belying a steely resolve. Bennett laid out the evidence, the letters, the basement crate, the veil, and Downey's arrest. "You knew something was happening in your church," she said. "Why didn't you stop it?" Reed's eyes flickered, but he maintained his innocence, claiming the letters were forgeries and the basement was used by others. "I'm a man of God," he said. "I would never harm anyone." Bennett wasn't buying it. She played her trump card, a bank statement showing a $10,000 deposit to Reed's account on June 15, 2016, 3 days after Emily vanished. The money came from an offshore account linked to a shell company. Reed's face crumpled, and for the first time, he looked scared. "I didn't know what they were planning," he whispered. "They said it was for the church to save souls." Bennett leaned in. "Who, Father? Who planned what?" But Reed shut down, muttering prayers under his breath. She let him go, knowing she was close but still missing the final piece. Claire, meanwhile, received another anonymous note, this one left in her car. "The truth is under the floor. Stop or you're next." Terrified but resolute, she showed it to Bennett, who traced the paper to the same hardware store as the first note. This time, surveillance caught a figure in a hoodie dropping the note, too blurry to identify but with a gait resembling Keller's. Bennett tightened surveillance on Keller, who was out on bail, and placed Claire under protection. The mention of under the floor gnawed at her. Could there be more in the church basement? Bennett ordered a second search of St. Anne's, this time with ground-penetrating radar. The team focused on the basement, where the dirt floor showed signs of disturbance. Hours into the dig, they found something, a small metal box buried 2 feet down. Inside was a USB drive and a bloody cloth. The cloth's blood matched Emily's DNA, a devastating blow to her family. The USB drive, however, was encrypted and tech experts estimated it would take days to crack. Bennett felt the weight of the case pressing down. Emily's fate was clearer, but the full truth remained locked away. As the town grappled with the news, Daniel visited the church one last time, clutching a photo of Emily in her wedding dress. He knelt by the altar where the veil had been found and whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't find you." Unbeknownst to him, a figure watched from the shadows, their breath uneven. The case was unraveling, and someone in Willow Creek was growing desperate to keep their secrets buried. The encrypted USB drive from St. Anne's Church basement became Detective Laura Bennett's obsession. Tech experts worked around the clock, but the encryption was sophisticated, suggesting someone with technical skill was involved. While waiting for results, Bennett doubled down on the suspects. Thomas Keller, the former janitor, was back in custody after violating his bail by attempting to leave Willow Creek. His trailer yielded more evidence, a hidden journal with cryptic entries about cleansing the church and the bride's sacrifice. The handwriting matched the anonymous notes sent to Claire, confirming Keller's role in the threats. But his entries stopped short of confessing to Emily's murder, and he refused to talk even under pressure. Father Michael Reed, meanwhile, was crumbling. After the bank deposit revelation, his lawyer negotiated a deal, limited immunity for information provided Reed testified against others. In a tense interview, Reed admitted knowing about troubled activities at St. Anne's but claimed he was coerced. They said the church would collapse without their help, he said, voice trembling. "I thought it was just money donations, maybe shady ones." When pressed about Emily, he grew evasive, saying only, "I heard things after she was gone, whispers about a mistake." Bennett sensed he was protecting someone, perhaps Patrick Downey, the church volunteer arrested in Albany. Downey, facing charges for possessing photos of Emily and Rachel Evans, was more cooperative. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he gave a partial statement. "I wasn't there when it happened," he insisted, sweat beading on his forehead. "But I helped clean up." Keller and another guy, they did the heavy lifting. He described a late-night meeting in the church basement in June 2016, where Keller and a man he called the enforcer disposed of evidence. Downey claimed he didn't know Emily was involved until after, when he found her veil in the basement and hid it near the altar, fearing exposure. "Who's the enforcer?" Bennett demanded. Downey shook his head. "He'll kill me if I say." Claire, under police protection, was struggling with fear but refused to stop digging. She revisited Ellen Price, the former choir director who had mentioned Father Reed's private meetings. Ellen, now more willing to talk, recalled a specific name, Vincent Morrow, a wealthy businessman who attended St. Anne's in 2016. Morrow, then in his 40s, was known for generous donations but also for his temper. Ellen overheard him arguing with Reed about fixing a problem days before Emily's disappearance. Claire shared this with Bennett, who ran Morrow's name through the system. Vincent Morrow, now 52, lived in a gated estate outside Burlington and owned several properties, including a storage facility linked to the burner phone used by Emily's unknown caller. Bennett's team secured a warrant for Morrow's financial records, revealing payments to Reed and Keller in 2016, funneled through the same shell company tied to Reed's $10,000 deposit. Morrow's storage facility also raised red flags. Rachel Evans' missing car had been traced to a similar facility in 2014, though the lead went cold. Bennett suspected Morrow was the enforcer Downey feared orchestrating the cover-up and possibly Emily's murder. She planned a raid on Morrow's estate but needed more evidence to ensure a conviction. The USB drive, still locked, loomed as the key. The drive was cracked after 5 grueling days, revealing a trove of files, financial ledgers, emails, and a single video. The ledgers detailed a money laundering scheme run through St. Anne's, with Morrow using the church to clean profits from illegal gambling and drug trafficking. Reed, Keller, and Downey were paid to facilitate, while Emily, unknowingly, had stumbled onto the scheme. The emails sent from Morrow to an alias discussed eliminating a witness in June 2016 with chilling specificity. The bride knows too much. Handle it before the ceremony. The video, grainy but devastating, showed Emily in the church basement, bound and pleading as a man's voice, later identified as Morrow's, ordered her silence. Bennett's team watched the video in stunned silence. Emily's tearful voice, begging for her life, was followed by a cut to black. The timestamp was June 12, 2016, 1:14 a.m., hours after her bachelorette party. There was no footage of her death, but the implication was clear. Bennett fought back tears, knowing Emily's family would soon face this heartbreak. She shared the findings with Daniel, Claire, and Emily's parents, preparing them for the worst. Margaret collapsed, sobbing, while Daniel stared blankly, clutching the photo of Emily in her wedding dress. She was trying to do the right thing, Claire whispered, piecing together Emily's phone calls and distractions. The raid on Vincent Morrow's estate was swift and precise. On October 28, 2025, SWAT teams stormed the property, arresting Morrow as he tried to flee through a back gate. His home contained a safe with more evidence, burner phones, fake IDs, and a ledger matching the USB drive's files. Morrow, a polished man with cold eyes, denied everything, claiming the video was fabricated. But voice analysis confirmed his presence, and Keller, facing life in prison, turned on him. Morrow planned it, Keller confessed. Emily saw him moving cash in the church office a week before the wedding. She asked questions, threatened to go to the police. He said she had to go. Keller's confession detailed the night of June 12. Morrow lured Emily to the church under the pretense of discussing a donation, using the burner phone to contact her. Keller and Downey waited in the basement where Emily was restrained. Morrow intended to scare her into silence, but when she fought back, he panicked. Keller claimed Morrow struck Emily, causing a fatal head injury, though he swore he only helped hide the body. Downey, tasked with disposing of the veil, left it near the altar, a reckless move that haunted him. Emily's body, Keller revealed, was buried in a nearby forest, a location Morrow had chosen for its isolation. Bennett led a search team to the coordinates Keller provided, a dense patch of woods 3 miles from St. Anne's. On October 30th, they found remains later confirmed as Emily's through dental records. Her engagement ring, still on her finger, gleamed in the dirt, a final link to the life she'd lost. The discovery shattered Willow Creek, with vigils held outside the church. Daniel, unable to face the sight, asked Claire to place a white rose at the altar for Emily. Margaret and Tom, though devastated, found solace in knowing their daughter could finally be laid to rest. Morrow's trial was set for spring 2026, with Reed, Keller, and Downey agreeing to testify against him. The USB drive's evidence exposed a wider criminal network, drawing FBI attention and leading to more arrests. Bennett uncovered a connection to Rachel Evans' disappearance, with Morrow suspected of her murder, though evidence was still being gathered. The third woman in Downey's photos was identified as a missing hitchhiker from 2015, adding to the case's scope. Claire, exhausted but relieved, began writing a blog about Emily's life, focusing on her kindness and courage. She visited the church one last time, standing where the veil was found. The letter's phrase, "a sacrifice for the greater good," echoed in her mind, a twisted justification for Morrow's greed. As she left, she noticed a small carving on a pew, EW+DH. Emily and Daniel's initials etched during a long-ago service. It was a reminder of the love that had defined Emily, not the tragedy that took her. Bennett, preparing for trial, reflected on the case's toll. The video of Emily's final moments played in her mind, a reminder of why she did this work. She visited Emily's grave, where a headstone read, "Emily Whitaker, beloved daughter, forever in our hearts." The veil, cleaned and preserved, was placed in a memorial display at the community center, a symbol of a truth finally uncovered. The trial of Vincent Morrow began in April 2026, drawing crowds to the Burlington courthouse. Willow Creek's residents packed the gallery, their faces a mix of grief and anger. Emily Whitaker's murder had torn the town apart, exposing secrets that had festered beneath St. Anne's Church for years. Detective Laura Bennett sat in the front row, her case files heavy with evidence: the USB drive, the veil, Keller's confession, and the financial records tying Morrow to a sprawling criminal network. Emily's family, Margaret, Tom, and Daniel, sat nearby, clutching each other's hands, their eyes fixed on Morrow, who sat impassively in a tailored suit, his cold demeanor unchanged. The prosecution opened with a devastating timeline. On June 12, 2016, Emily had discovered Morrow's money laundering operation while helping organize church donations. She'd seen him in the office late one night, moving stacks of cash into a hidden safe. Her questions, innocent at first, grew pointed when she noticed discrepancies in the church's books. Morrow, aware of her suspicions, used a burner phone to lure her to St. Anne's after her bachelorette party, claiming he needed to discuss a wedding gift. The video from the USB drive played for the jury showed Emily bound in the church basement, her voice trembling as she begged Morrow to let her go. The footage cut off abruptly, but the implication was clear: Morrow had killed her to protect his empire. Thomas Keller's testimony was a turning point. Shuffling to the stand, his gaunt frame and haunted eyes contrasted with his earlier defiance. He described Morrow's orders to deal with the problem, admitting he held Emily while Morrow struck her with a metal pipe from the basement. "She fought hard," Keller said, his voice breaking. "She kept saying she just wanted to go home to Daniel." He claimed Morrow ordered him and Downey to bury her body in the forest, promising them a cut of the profits to stay silent. Keller's journal, entered as evidence, detailed his guilt with entries like, "Her blood is on my hands, but he made me do it." Patrick Downey, the church volunteer, corroborated Keller's story, though he painted himself as a reluctant participant. He admitted hiding Emily's veil near the altar, hoping it would be mistaken for litter. "I was scared," he testified, avoiding the jury's gaze. "Morrow said if I talked, I'd end up like her." Downey's photos, including those of Rachel Evans and the unidentified hitchhiker, suggested Morrow's crimes extended beyond Emily, a point the prosecution hammered home. The defense tried to discredit Downey, calling him an unreliable drunk, but the USB drive's emails linking Morrow to the orders were undeniable. Father Michael Reed's testimony was the most contentious. Under his immunity deal, he admitted accepting Morrow's money to keep quiet about irregularities at St. Anne's. He claimed he didn't know about Emily's murder until after. When Morrow confessed during a private meeting, "I was weak," Reed said, tears streaming down his face. "I thought the money was for the church, not blood money." The letters found in the organ loft, now confirmed as his, revealed his inner conflict, with phrases like "sins buried beneath the altar," reflecting his guilt. The defense argued Reed was the mastermind, but his frail health and lack of motive weakened their case. Claire, watching from the gallery, felt a mix of relief and rage. She'd spent months piecing together Emily's final days, and now the truth was public. She testified about the anonymous notes, linking them to Keller, and shared Ellen Price's account of Morrow's heated arguments with Reed. Her testimony painted a picture of a church corrupted by greed, with Emily as an unwitting victim. Daniel, unable to speak without breaking down, submitted a written statement describing Emily's love for teaching and her excitement for their future. "She deserved better," he wrote. "She deserved to live." The defense's case was weak, relying on character witnesses who portrayed Morrow as a generous philanthropist. But the financial ledgers, showing millions laundered through St. Anne's, and the video evidence were too damning. The jury deliberated for only 6 hours before returning a guilty verdict on charges of first-degree murder, money laundering, and conspiracy. Morrow showed no emotion as the judge sentenced him to life without parole. Keller and Downey received 20 years each, with parole possible after 15, due to their cooperation. Reed, stripped of his priesthood, faced no charges but lived out his days in disgrace. The trial's end brought closure to Willow Creek, but not peace. Emily's funeral, held in May 2026, filled the community center with mourners. Her veil, now cleaned, was displayed beside her coffin, a symbol of her stolen future. Daniel placed their engagement photo at the altar, whispering, "I'll always love you." Margaret and Tom, though heartbroken, found strength in knowing Emily's courage had exposed a criminal network. The FBI, using Morrow's ledgers, dismantled his operations, arresting 12 associates across 3 states. Rachel Evans' case was reopened, with new evidence pointing to Morrow's involvement. Bennett, reflecting on the case, visited St. Anne's one last time. The church, still abandoned, was slated for demolition, its dark history too heavy for revival. She stood in the basement, where Emily's final moments unfolded, and felt a weight lift. The truth, buried for 9 years, was free. Claire, meanwhile, published her blog, titled Emily's Light, chronicling her friend's life and legacy. It gained a small but loyal following, with readers sharing stories of loved ones lost to similar tragedies. The blog became Claire's way of honoring Emily, ensuring her name lived on. In Willow Creek, life slowly moved forward. The community center hosted a memorial scholarship in Emily's name, funding education for local teachers. Daniel, still grieving, moved to Burlington, unable to stay in a town filled with memories. He kept Emily's engagement ring on a chain around his neck, a quiet reminder of their love. Margaret and Tom planted a rose garden in their backyard, naming it after Emily, its blooms a tribute to her vibrant spirit. As summer 2026 arrived, a small plaque was unveiled outside the community center, in memory of Emily Whitaker, who sought truth and found justice. For those who knew her, it was a bittersweet reminder of a life cut short, but a legacy that endured. The church's secrets, once buried beneath its floor, were now exposed to the light, and Emily's courage had made it possible.